Senate will please come to order. They will have a moment of silence to collect your thoughts before we get into the rest of the day. Thank you. Are there any announcements?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules be suspended and that H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies appearing on the notice calendar and affecting the revenue of the state not be referred under Rule 31 to the Committee on Finance.
Now, the senator from Washington has moved that the rules be suspended and H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies, which appearing on the notice calendar and affecting the revenue of the state, not be referred under Rule 31 to the Committee on Finance. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules relating to Act 42, and the bill is not referred to the Committee on Finance. Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that the rules be suspended and H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies appearing on the calendar for notice be taken up for immediate action.
Now the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the rules be suspended and that H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies appearing on the calendar for notice be taken up for immediate action. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have suspended your rules to take up for immediate action H42. H42 appearing on the notice calendar and the rules having been suspended to take it up for immediate action was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, and they have referred the bill affirmatively. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H42, an act relating to temporary alternative measures, procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. I'd like to recognize the chair of the committee, the senator from Madison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just wait for everybody to get the, or as you're getting the bill handed out, it's not in the calendar. Your Senate Government Operations Committee did not make any changes to the House version of the bill, so you should be getting that to look at as I go through the report. So as you know, since the COVID-19 pandemic began in March 2020, we have temporarily authorized and reauthorize alternative policies to preserve access to elections and public meetings while also protecting the health and safety of Vermonters. Last biennium, we twice passed the same temporary provisions you see today in H42 that would permit remote electronic public meetings to all public bodies in the state that are subject to the open meeting law, postpone annual town and school meetings, and allow Australian voting instead of floor voting for town and school budget votes, among other provisions for certain municipalities. Indeed, literally, the first act of the 2021-2022 biennium was to implement the same procedures we are considering today. And we reauthorized them at this time last year as well. If returning senators are feeling a sense of deja vu, you are certainly not alone. This year, while the pandemic is waning and we generally feel a sense of return to mostly normal, we also know that the uncertainty and anxiety of the pandemic remain. We also know that many of the temporary and emergency provisions required during the pandemic have caused us to rethink how and why we do things. They have thrust us into a place where we want to create a new normal, where we ultimately both return to what works and reinvent what does not. The reiterative provisions of H42 are part of a process to do just that. The provisions we enacted last year expired this past Sunday on January 15th. So the bill's temporary extensions of remote electronic public meetings and town meeting voting procedures provide municipalities with clarity and continued flexibility for 2023 and 2024, while we take the time to deliberate potential permanent changes that build on pandemic lessons and the increasing accessibility of electronic options. The provisions of H42 are permissive. They do not mandate any temporary or permanent provisions to municipal voting, annual meetings, or public meetings statewide. Towns and public bodies currently have and would continue to have the authority to decide which voting and meeting procedures best serve their community if H42 becomes law. Extending these provisions now gives us the time to have a thoughtful debate about the long-term use of remote-only and hybrid meetings for public bodies, discuss local voting procedures, and work to establish best practices and preserve equity of access and transparency of government proceedings. So let's turn to the bill. If you want to look at the sections, which you should have on your desks, your GovOps committee, as I said, did not make any changes to the bill as it came to us from the House. Section 1A permits a municipality's legislative body to move the date of the annual municipal meeting to a later date after town meeting day. And that would be for school boards and select boards or city councils, et cetera. And Section 1B allows temporary flexibility for municipal legislative bodies to vote to apply the Australian ballot system to annual and special meetings through July 1st of 2024. So even if they have a floor vote methodology, they can use Australian vote temporarily. They cannot use that vote to then decide to permanently become an Australian voting town. They can only use it temporarily during this time period, and then they would go back to the discussion about a permanent or not Australian ballot. And Section 1C allows municipalities to hold electronic informational meetings about the items up for discussion at the annual meeting. So the sort of informational meetings about the town or the school district budget, those can be hybrid or electronic. And Section D provides an extension of remote meeting authority for the town of Brattleboro, which is the only town in the state that has a unique representative town meeting. And this section would allow Brattleboro the option of holding their meeting remotely for the next 2 years. Section 1E provides an extension of a provision for the Northeast Kingdom Waste Management District to allow their Board of Supervisors to adopt their annual budget by a vote of the board. That this waste management district is the only waste management district in the state to require a vote of all the towns in the district to approve the budget, and they have 40 towns in their district. The annual Board of Supervisors for this district has already voted to approve a charter change, making this authority permanent, which we will see later this session, I believe. So this temporary authority allows them to adopt their budget by a board vote for the upcoming annual meetings under the same temporary authority they have used for the past 2 years and will likely be using in the future. Section 2 of the bill has the broadest impact, as it allows all public meetings in the state that are currently subject to the open meeting law to be held remotely via electronic means without a physical presence at a designated location. These meetings must continue to use the specific warning procedures that are currently in place and provide telephone call-in options and direct public access and the ability to participate to all members of the public on an electronic platform. Same language that we've already done in past 2 years for those of us who've had the pleasure. Section 3 suspends the prescriptive language required on ballots for school district budget votes regarding the total budget and the per pupil spending increases or decreases for that budget. Last session, we approved the suspension of this ballot language requirement for fiscal years 25 through 29 as a result of the implementation of the new pupil weighting factors. Thus, H42 closes the gap and prevents voter confusion during a time of transition and economic turbulence. And it does it for this year, what will already be happening for next year. The temporary authorities proposed in this bill for remote and town meeting day election procedures would take effect on passage in time for town meeting day warnings and election procedures and expire on July 1st, 2024. We heard testimony about how remote meetings can allow for greater access and transparency, increase board member and citizen participation, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions by preventing unnecessary travel. We also heard concerns about access to broadband, lack of accountability and press coverage, poor meeting management, and technology failures that impact democratic access. Many of us agree that in-person meetings provide a richer experience than electronic ones, but remote options often provide greater convenience and accessibility. These are tensions that deserve more attention and discussion. We know that most town and school boards have returned to in-person meetings, while at the same time, many public committees and commissions continue to meet remotely. This bill doesn't address the long-term questions that many communities are now weighing about access to local democratic process and the rich tradition of town meeting in Vermont. Your Government Operations Committee is committed to continuing these conversations, hearing from more witnesses, and proposing a permanent provisions with the goal of balancing the many considerations about access to democracy in the post-COVID 21st century. So even on the short time for this bill, your Government Operations heard from a number of witnesses, including, of course, our Legislative Council attorney, the director of the School Boards Association, the Vermont Municipal Clerks and Treasurers Association, the Vermont Press Association, the Secretary of Education, of course, the sponsor and the chair of the House Committee who reported the bill on the floor, several citizens from the town of Norwich, and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I wish I had numbered my pages. So your Government Operation Committee recommends the bill for passage on a vote of 6-0-0, Mr. President, and we respectfully request your support. Thank you very much.
I heard the report of the Committee on Government Operations. Question shall bill be read a third time and ready for the question. So, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. We have ordered third reading of H42.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move at this time that the rules be suspended and H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies, be placed in all remaining stages of passage.
Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that H42 the rules be suspended and that the bill be placed through all remaining stages of passage. Are you ready for the question? So all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. We have placed H42 through all remaining stages of passage. Question is, please listen to the third reading bill.
H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies.
Thank you for the third reading bill. The question shall bill pass. Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have passed H42, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move the rules be suspended and H42, an act relating to temporary alternative procedures for annual municipal meetings and electronic meetings of public bodies, be messaged to the House forthwith.
Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate suspend its rules and that H42 be messaged to the House forthwith. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have suspended the rules. Message H42 to the House forthwith. We now have some bills for for Bill. We have S-23, introduced by Senator Hardy and others, to move to the first reading of the bill.
S-23, an act relating to prohibiting certain forms of discrimination.
Now you've heard the first reading of S-23. It is referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. We have up for introduction S-24, introduced by Senator White. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
S-24, an act relating to the Clean Fuels Program.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. Senator from Chittenden, would you care to make, there are no bills for introduction today, so would you care to make a motion to adjourn pending announcements?
I would, Mr. President. I would move that pending announcements, the Senate stand in adjournment until 11:30 a.m. Friday, January 20th.
Senator from Chittenden Central has moved pending announcements that Senate stand adjournment until 11:30 on Friday, January 20th. Are there any announcements? Senator from Chittenden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to mark the occasion of our first bill moving out of the chamber, and congratulations to the Government Operations Committee and its new chair, the Senator from Addison, Senator Hart.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Madison.
Senate Natural Resources and Energy, we meet tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Senator from Madison.
Senate Government Operations will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet 15 minutes after the call of the gavel.
Are there any other announcements? By way of announcement, the chair has a couple of different announcements. The first is we've already had one instance where a bill was potentially to go to one of two committees, and in our efforts up here to flip the coin, we flipped the coin in the wrong direction. So I just want to let folks know that if there's a bill, particularly that has some pre-arranged conversations between various committees of jurisdiction, and there's a little bit of a plan in place, if you were to let the secretary know that before the bill were introduced and referred, that would save us some action on the floor, and we could be more efficient and expedient in our work. And secondly, by way of announcement for the Committee on Committees, I have a number of announcements to make relating to senatorial appointments to a range of state boards and committees and legislative committees. The first one being the Emergency Board, Senators Kitchell and Senator Cummings. Joint Fiscal Committee, Senator Cummings, Senator Sears, Senator Kitchell, Senator Westman, Senator Baruth. The Vermont Economic Progress Council, Senator Chittenden. The Vermont State Infrastructure Bank Board, Senator Chittenden. The Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel, Senator McDonald. The Joint Legislative Management Committee, Senator Baruth, Senator Hashim, Senator Kitchell, Senator Brock. The Joint Rules Committee, Senator Baruth, Senator Mazza, Senator Clarkson, Senator Brock. The Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, Senator Bray, Senator Weeks, Senator McDonald, Senator Lyons. The Governor's Snowmobile Council, Senator Kitchell. The Senate Sexual Harassment Prevention Panel, Senator Clarkson, Senator Perchlik, Senator Watson, Senator Campion, Senator Weeks, and Senator White. Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, the Senator from Chittenden Central has moved that Senate stand adjournment until 11:30 a.m. Friday, January 20th. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjournment until 11:30 Friday, January 20th.